Good morning to everybody. I am Ton Clemente, and I will be your main presenter for this morning. No? We would like to welcome the Science and Technology Cluster who are with us this morning. Joining us this morning is our moderator. Uh, can we say hello to Professor Ivy Suwan from the Virata School of Business? Hi, Ms. Ivy.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're also joined by our support team from the Office for the Advancement of Teaching, Ms. Daisy Ago. She will be making sure that your questions will be transferred to a file. So, we cannot answer all of your questions, but this morning we'll try to answer as many. But we will make sure that we can take note of them. So Ms. Daisy will be the one who will be in charge. We're also joined by Professor Lorelei Grepo-Halaw and Michael Van Sopranis from uh, the Interactive Learning Center. Okay, sige. We will be spending about 2 hours together. So sit back, no? And I'm going to share the screen and start this presentation. What is this conversation about? So for this morning, we will talk about how to prepare our courses for remote learning. But why are we here? Why are we having this conversation? This was really born out of the directive from the UP System Committee on Remote Learning. If you attended the CUI dialogue prepared by the committee, so they are asking us to prepare what they call the course packs, you know, or at least a detailed course roadmap for us and our students. So this will be kind of a step-by-step guide on how to prepare those course packs. And also, this is also the opportunity for our office, the ILC, Interactive Learning Center, the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, and the CU Committee on Remote Learning to identify other forms of support for the faculty. So what are we going to expect in the next 2 hours? So I will briefly provide a context of what we can expect this coming first semester AY 20 to 21. Actually, if you are going to teach this mid-year, this is going to be sort of a practice of what to expect, you know, when we do it for about 14 weeks next sem. The bulk of this webinar will talk about the preparations that we need to make for the incoming academic year. Okay, so a little caveat about this webinar. Although we divided our faculty in terms of academic clusters, and although I tried my best to provide or frame the conversation in a science and technology cluster approach, it's going to feel more general. It's going to have a more broad feel. You know, the suggestions, the strategies will feel a little bit more broad, such that it can be flexible, you know, or amenable to adaptation, whatever discipline we may be. You know? So in order for us to answer your more area-specific or more course-specific questions, that will be goal number 3. We will try to address as many of your concerns as possible related to remote learning. And as I previously mentioned, due to time constraints, we won't be able to answer everything, but we will do our very best to record them and provide you with answers as soon as they are ready. So let's start with a little bit of context. So to get things out of the way, and I think by this time you've probably heard a lot about this, and this is probably very clear to you, but just to emphasize that remote learning is not necessarily equivalent to online learning. Okay, so it's remote because the main feature is that we are physically distant from our students. So the teaching and learning is not necessarily happening at the same time, and that we are far from our students. Okay, but online learning is one example of remote learning. So online learning is one way of delivering instruction. So it's online because the main features include it's technology supported, you know, and also it's web-based. or internet-based. If we think about it, we've probably done some elements of online learning in our classes before. So if you've ever asked your students to watch a YouTube video, that's an element of online learning. If you've asked your students to upload something in Ovle, or our university virtual learning management system, if you've ever asked your students to send you an email or chat with you, those are elements of online learning. But again, we have to remember that it doesn't have to be completely online. So some things, if not possible, we can do them using more physical structures, and we'll get to that later. So just to be clear, it's not going to have to be fully online like the one that we're doing now. Will our roles be different in remote learning compared to residential classes? No? And the reflection seems to be that there's more class management than content delivery. If in residential classes, there's a lot more lecture, or there's a lot more input from us as faculty. In remote learning, it's really all about the design. And that's why we're here. We have to make sure that our classes are structured in such a way that if it's possible, we can give everything during the first week of class and we can just watch it go, watch it fly. Our main task would most likely be more facilitation than content delivery. But what will not change? So there might be more class management. However, at the end of the day, we are still designers or curators of the learning experience. If you've ever taught a class before, or if you've ever handled a workshop before, then you've already designed a learning experience. You know these things already. You know the principles already. So now is just the time to make things a little bit more explicit. If you've done a syllabus, you've designed a learning experience. If you've scoured the internet for good readings and good videos to watch, to ask your students to watch, then you've curated the learning experience. So take note that not all of these things have to be created by you. The goal here is to design and create the experience for the students. So in preparation, it might be good to begin with the end in mind. I'm not sure if you've seen the OVPAA memo about the student evaluation of teachers, but this is how the SET is going to look like. So it might be good to ask, how are we going to be evaluated by our students at the end of the SEM? And for a lot of us, this is important because we use this for our promotion. So it might be good to know what kind of experience we need to curate. And if we're going to look at the items, and I did a crude categorization of the items, there are about 15. The elements or the general principles of good teaching are the same, regardless if it's remote or residential. So for instance, students have to perceive us as fair. And a huge part of that would be, for instance, providing timely feedback, or fairness in the interpersonal sense, showing respect for student diversity and individual differences. And then there's also the teaching competence, or the quality, the high quality of our instruction. And if we're going to see here, a lot of these things we can do remotely, like encouraging our students to think critically and or creatively. And in fact, because we are in remote mode, we are forced more than ever to encourage them to be more creative. There are things like answering student questions clearly and adequately. So now we can't answer them face to face, but there are more modes now for us to answer their questions. And finally, there's warmth. There's the communication that we hear them, that we do our best to make them feel good and less afraid and less anxious, that we can allow them to communicate with us, that we are available for consultation, and that we interact with students in a positive way. So the point of those slides is just to remind us that while remote is daunting, it's scary, it's challenging, it's probably new for most of us. A lot of the elements there are something that you're already familiar with. So it's really a matter of adapting these things to something more remote. Okay, so continuing with the context, last April 2020, I'm not sure if you were able to receive or answer even the OVCAA survey on remote learning readiness. if you look at the results, there were around 1,000 faculty members who answered the survey. Of course, we weren't able to reach out to those who didn't have internet access. But based on the faculty who responded, the preferred mode for delivering lessons would be email. And also uploading files on Google Drive and using the learning management system, like UVLE, okay? So we also asked students similarly this question: what is their preferred mode for receiving lessons? And a huge part, like almost half, no, said email is a good strategy, no? And also uploading on shared drive and learning management system. So there is some sort of synergy between the faculty and students in terms of how we would want to receive lessons, no? In case the worst case scenario is we can't do synchronous sessions. So what is the reminder? What could be a key takeaway message here? In preparing for remote learning, it might be good to maximize email. It might be good to teach students how to email because that's something that they take for granted. It might be good to practice setting a time, just when we're going to answer emails. And the huge challenge would probably be how we can conduct our entire class using email alone. Okay. Second would be to maximize the use of UVLE. So all of the things mentioned earlier, messaging students, uploading files, interacting with students, those functionalities are available in UVLE, our learning management system. So I invite you this afternoon, we're going to have another webinar using the same link you used for this webinar. So ILC will conduct a basic course on using UVLE. And third, and I think this is a good reminder, let's try to minimize drastic changes as much as possible. The shift to remote learning is already a huge change. It's a major change. And with any change, there will be resistance. It's going to be difficult for you and for your students. So the bells and the whistles and the learning, all of these recording and using fancy tools, that can come in later. So for now, we can stick to what we know and assume that the biggest change would be the remote learning, and everything else that we can stay the same, we try to do so. And also, we try to be more flexible with our mode of delivery. I think that is also the message of our survey, such that we need to prepare considering how we can buffer for unexpected shocks. There is a lot of planning going on in the system level, in the CU level, in your college level, and there might be policies that will come in as the months progress, and it will be easier for us to adapt or make changes if we think about how is it going, what is the most flexible mode of delivery for our courses. Okay, next, let's talk about preparations, because this is what's going to be expected of us by the system, by our units, and most especially by our students. Now, one of the resistance that we've been hearing about remote learning is that it seems to be more exhausting. There seems to be more work for everybody, and that is partly true. So there will be a little bit more preparation than usual. However, if we watch this webinar prepared by Dr. Patricia Arinto, she was a former dean of the Faculty of Education in the UP Open University and is the current dean of UP Visayas Tacloban College. So she outlined any tasks that we need to do as we prepare for remote learning. And if you look at these 4 tasks: analysis of learner and learning context, planning content and mode of delivery, curating learning resources and designing learning activities, and executing assessment. If you've ever taught a course before, all of these things you've already done. You've already prepared for these things. So if you have a good syllabus, and if your unit has already gone through the curricular change process, then you have your outcomes-based syllabus already, then that's a lot for accomplished. if you're very good at documenting, you know, your strategies in class, then the work is already a lot of the work has already been done. So remote learning is daunting. However, some of the things that we've done before, we are familiar with. So again, it's really a matter of being more thoughtful, being planning ahead, no? And transposing these skills to the remote mode. Okay. So for the next part of this webinar, I will be presenting concrete strategies related to each of these 4 steps. Okay. After I finish with one major step, um, we will pause for question and answer. Okay. I hope you're still okay. 30 minutes is already very long, no? But okay, I hope you're hanging in there. Okay, let's start with the first task, analysis of learner and learning context. What will probably help us as we prepare for remote learning is to imagine how it's going to look like. So just imagine a first day or the first week of class. So how does your first day or first week of class look like in a residential or face-to-face mode? So there's probably a getting to know you exercise. So there's probably an orientation of the course. There's you walk through your students using your syllabus, no? About what they can expect. No? You talk about class policies. And if you think about remote learning, it's going those activities are going to be the same and very helpful for students. It's just that, you know, we might need to add a little extra. For instance, it might be good to have a quick survey on remote learning readiness of your students. So during the first week, when you're able to look at your class list and access their email addresses and their cell phone numbers, no, it might be good to conduct a quick survey. What are their online capabilities? No? Can they do synchronous at least once a week? You know, what are the gadgets or tools at their disposal at home? There's also a suggestion to do a little bit of empathy mapping. It's a good, might be a good exercise. So here we can share our anxieties, or we ask students about their anxieties. What do you think is going to be difficult? What are you most afraid of this coming semester? And it's an opportunity for us to also share how we're feeling, how we're also afraid of the contingencies or of the amount of work that needs to be done. And it's a good exercise because it builds a sense of community, and students know that, you know, we're also experiencing some of the things that they're experiencing at the moment. But also, para hindi naman downer, so it's not going to be a very bleak kind of opening, it might be good to also ask them what they're excited about. And it might be good for you to share what you're excited about for remote learning. So third, it might be good to have an introduction and an orientation. So if you can do it synchronously, like via Zoom or Google Classroom, that would be okay. If not, it's time to practice your letter writing skills. So now is the time to be a little bit more detailed in your orientation email. No? I think very important here when you communicate to them is for students to know a communication plan. What is the best way for them to reach out to you, and so what mode and when would be a good time. So also para they know that we also have boundaries and we won't be answering queries at 1 in the morning. But unless it's something that brings you joy, so by all means, please go ahead. The first week of classes would also be an opportunity to practice the use of the learning management system. So it's because this is new for a lot of our students. They need to practice small tasks. So we can ask them to do small tasks, no stakes tasks, such as submitting an online index card via Ovle or simply replying to your email, so that they get used to the idea of communicating that way. So for instance, this second semester, kasi some of us, I'm not sure if we still do this, but we usually ask for an index card where they have a picture and then contact information, which is important, and we have some chika questions so that it's also fun for us to read and get to know our students. So it's the same concept, but it's a slide. I email it to them, they input their information, and then I ask them to upload it in Ovlet. So there we get to practice some of the things that we will be doing in class. And this one I feel is very important because in remote learning, it's a little bit vaguer how much time students need to devote for our classes. Because before, it's clearer because we spend about 3 hours a week if you have a 3 unit course. So we see them 3 hours a week. But now they might need to know a little more how much time they need to spend for some of the activities. No? So for instance, during the first day of class, I have this slide, which we sometimes take for granted. I actually teach them how to read specific for our class. No? For your particular purposes, it might be good to think about what is that fundamental skill or technique that students will be building on throughout the sem, or that students will most likely be doing throughout the semester. So are they going, do we need to remind them how to practice computations? Do we need to remind them how to read data, how to code, or generally how to study for the course? No? So it's just a quick orientation where I tell them what I expect of them when they read. So I tell them, read with intent, not simply for comprehension. So please understand that I come from the social sciences, and the core skill that they need to do in our classes would be to read a lot. So I just assure them that it's not going to be easy, but that's my role. I will help you go through the process. And then I give them some more instructions. So how do you read? So these are things that you might want to flag. So your reading is purposive. And then I make them practice. So like just take note the start time and end time. So I give them the first page of our reading, take note of the start time and end time. No? And then I give them a task, so purposive and structured in reading. And then I just make them take note of whatever. And then I ask them after, how long did it take you to read that? And if they say it took me 10 minutes for a page, then I tell them, okay, so we're going to read 20 pages in this class. So that's the amount of time that you need to devote, perhaps just to prepare for this class. Okay. Um, so there. Maybe it's a good time to pause a little bit, and then if you have any questions in the chat box already, I will ask Miss Ivy to kindly read out some of these questions if we have them.
Hi, Ton. The first question would be about copyright. So how do we protect the teaching materials that we produce with copyright? And are there guidelines on the copyright issues and what scientific articles can be included in a course pack? Do we have to ask permission for the articles that we're going to use?
Right. This is a conversation that we already the conversation is already starting. Thank you for that question. In the system committee on remote learning. No? So if I'm not mistaken, AVP Evangeline, I think, is here. Uh, the UP is formulating some policies on how we can protect the work and the design of our course packs. In terms of fair use of materials, we had a conversation about that yesterday also during the meeting. And parang, of course, we're going to confirm first with legal, but it seems that if it's primarily for educational purposes and we're not necessarily giving them everything, the entire book, you know, and we're going to remind students um, about not sharing or not reproducing or not selling some of the things, then that would work. No? But the good principle might be, when in doubt, ask for permission, especially if the licensing is not very clear. Anything else, Miss Ivy?
Second would be about SAT. How do we fairly assess the teachers during the first semester, considering that it might be a steep learning curve for some faculty? And then, yeah, that's it.
Okay. That is an excellent question. The committee on SET, if I'm not mistaken, is going to meet sometime in July to discuss some of these things. I am told that there is data from UP Open University, and that the SET works. No? But of course, yung argument nga is, but they're probably experts in that mode already. So might be a good reminder also, we can also remind our students to be extra kind and extra patient with us. No? And I feel that if we are transparent and if we are, if we tell them about things that are difficult for us and we focus on our strengths, then the SAT would probably still work to our advantage. But it's something that we really need to look into and learn. Look into and study more about.
Okay, last question for this session would be, for this part would be about the internet connection of the students. How should we reply if they don't have stable internet connection, and how would they access their CRS or UVLE if they don't have access yet?
Okay, thank you. I am told that if, and maybe our ILC team can help us put the email address in the chat box. So for emails, because you're right, all our students should have a UPD webmail to access UVLE. And the computer center says that students can simply email helpdesk@upd.edu.ph. Tama ba ako? So si Van from ILC will post. Yes, please. So I think it's helpdesk@upd.edu.ph, and they need to email that to activate their account. If they cannot be, so if there's a certain level of access, so maybe the email mode and the UVLE will work, as long as they're low bandwidth. I will be showing you some other modes of delivery. If we can't access them via email, we might need to communicate to them via chat or via call if the signal permits. No? And the worst case scenario, which I will be showing later, is worst case in the sense that I think it will be a little bit more expensive, would be to deliver the course packs to them. Okay. So we'll be talking about some more of these things as we proceed, but maybe we can go na to the next part. Okay, sige. Next, let's talk about our second main task would be to plan content and mode of delivery. So let's split this discussion into two first. Okay, so let's talk about planning content first. Okay, and when we talk about planning content, yung panghahawakan natin, our what is that? What is panghahawakan in English? So the things that we need to, parang the foundation, the source of everything would be our learning outcomes or non-negotiable competencies. So what are the outcomes? So at the end of your course, you would like to transform students into students who can perform particular skills. No? So what are these? And it's very important to know them at the beginning. And again, if you've ever done the obedized syllabus, then you have these already. That is important because the entire course will be an operationalization of your learning outcomes. No? So everything begins with the learning outcome. So I curated some. I would like to thank faculty members who make their syllabi available online. So these are some of the learning outcomes that I found in some courses. Paumanin po that I wasn't able to scout for as wide as possible. But for instance, align a student spectrometer. Create, manage, and transform data sets appropriately using SAS. Demonstrate basic laboratory techniques like weighing, measuring, pipetting, etc. properly. So if you want your students to be able to learn these outcomes, everything else should align. So what topics should be discussed for students to demonstrate the outcome? So you identify the topics. Now, what learning resources should be available to them so that they will, acquire the knowledge necessary? And then to reinforce the knowledge, what activities can we do in class? No? Can there be a group work, discussion forum, a little bit of lecture, a lot of problem sets? No? And then finally, how are we going to assess authentically that they were able to demonstrate the outcomes? Okay. But also, it might be good to keep in mind that while learning outcomes are fundamental, because everything else will follow, everything else should be aligned, it's also good to be clear to yourself what are the important guiding principles for you. It might be important to be clear to your faculty, to your unit, what are our guiding principles, what are our values, What are the things that are important to us that we want to communicate to our students? So the buzzword seems to be compassion, flexibility, honor, excellence. No, what else? If these are the important guiding principles, then you need to operationalize them as well in the form of your class guidelines and policies. And so usually this is available naman in our syllabi. So we just need to be a little bit more explicit. So for instance, if you say, I want to be a compassionate and flexible teacher this semester, how will that be operationalized in terms of your exams? How will that be operationalized in terms of submissions? No? Um, uh, in terms of attendance, because the idea of attendance now is, we can't check it regularly, no? But we need to know that they're there or that they're participating. So it's very important to clarify these things and then plan your content accordingly. Now, what is, I think, extra difficult for field classes, lab classes, skills-based courses, such as in a lot of science and technology courses, is that we don't have access to the lab like we used to. The software might only be accessible in particular computer terminals. Things are a little bit more expensive. So how can we approach this semester? So there are some strategies that we can think of, but also we need to discuss with our unit. So for instance, the split sem approach, or a little more blended, if we want to be a bit technical. So the idea is, can we squeeze in all our theoretical discussions, theoretical ideas at the beginning of the semester, and then during the second half of the semester, when it's a little bit more able, when situation is hopefully a little better or there's less restrictions movement wise, maybe we can conduct like one or two lab moments, field moments with our students. Uh, but then again, the ultimate challenge here is well, first, we know about the cases, the COVID cases in UP, so it's a little, we need to be a little bit more cautious. And also, we need to prepare our labs for physical distancing. Are we equipped for these kinds of interactions with, let's say, 20 students? So another approach could be, sorry, I don't know how to, to frame this more scientifically, but like habal approach. So if we cannot make our students demonstrate it this semester, pwede bang habulin na lang natin siya next sem? So it's the coordination with their faculty is going to be important here. So I cannot make them align a student spectrometer this semester. Will it be possible to do that next semester, just so we know that they can do it? But then again, for the first two bullet points, there seems to be a lot of changes and a lot of really good coordination. So maybe if we're operating on minimizing drastic changes, it might be good to think about modifying learning outcomes. So in the sense that maybe we can approximate the skill or output. So if we're asking them to demonstrate basic laboratory techniques, what is an approximation that they were able to pipette something? Did I say it right? Or if they cannot use SAS or a particular software, is there a way to demonstrate the skill but using Ovle, for instance? Can we substitute a skill or output with something as important? If they cannot demonstrate the skill, like weighing, measuring, is it possible to say for them to do like a more detailed guide? Is it enough to do a more licensure type of assessment for our student? Because actually, I was reflecting on this a few days ago while preparing for this. Some of our professions require licensure exams, but their exams don't necessarily make you demonstrate the skill. Parang an exam is enough. Of course, we can debate about the validity of the exams or if exams are really helpful. But for a lot of our professions like medicine, gatekeeping mechanism siya, diba? So you need to pass the test for you to be able to practice. And so can we kind of think in those terms na can an exam substitute the skills for now, just for now, and then find a way to kind of demonstrate them in some other courses. So what's important for now is to identify the need to know versus the nice to know, or the need to do versus the nice to do. So there's going to be a lot of reduction maybe without necessarily sacrificing the non-negotiable competencies. Okay. Uh, so one way of also thinking about how to plan content is to think in this manner. I like this analogy that when we're preparing for remote learning, it's as if we're writing our own textbook. And maybe that's why it seems difficult. I don't have a textbook. I've never written a textbook. And just thinking about it, it's giving me nightmares. But the idea is that when you look at a textbook, it can stand on its own. For one, it's pretty, visually it's appealing. There are pictures, it's colored, glossy, paper. But also structurally, if you look at the contents of a chapter, there are learning objectives at the beginning, then there's the input, uh, the bulk of the chapter are inputs, and then there are reflection moments, and then there is an assessment at the end, and then future reference, other references that you might want to check out. So that is how we're going to plan our content this time around. So think of it as like writing a chapter. And it's one thing if you're doing a course on your own. That's why the reminder for us is to work in teams, to pair with other faculty members, and divide those chapters accordingly, and come up with one kind of unified. So the burden is less for an individual faculty. So we also think that way. How can we unburden ourselves so it's not super daunting? Second would be the modular approach. So what we learned from the CUI dialogue is that in principle, the BOR has approved, I think, the 14-week semester. But the 14-week semester, we have to remember 1 week for assessment, and then 1 week for maybe just remote learning readiness assessment. So we have about 12 weeks to work with. And then we also have to buffer for contingencies. What if something happens, or you lose your internet connection for a week? So it might be good to think of like 10 to 12 major topics, and then approach it as one topic, one module, 1 week. So then you're sure that you will have 10 weeks, for your course. If you're going to use OVLE, that is one way of looking at the interface of OVLE. It's structured as modules. So one topic as one module, and then everything else is there. What are the readings? What assessments should be submitted? What videos can they watch? And other things. So they'll talk about that a little later. So what is the output of the planning? So of course, if you plan, there should be something concrete, born out of your planning. One would be the outcomes-based syllabus, which a lot of us has already done. The extra work would be adding a little bit more detail. So it's going to be a detailed course guide. So what kind of detail would we want to add? For instance, you might want to break down your syllabi into this. So write the learning outcome here. So for instance, you design, manage, and program data using a software. So how many weeks should be devoted? What is the topic that you're going to cover? What should the students prepare for or read? And then what are you going to do? Do they need to submit anything? Now, the additional, which is very important, would be to tell the students the amount of workload that they should expect from that week or from our course in general. So now it's time to ask them, now it's time to be more explicit. How many hours for assessment? So every week, will you have an exam? Or is there a problem set that they need to accomplish? How many hours do they need to devote for that? So let's say 1.5. The asynchronous sessions, how long will they need to read a chapter? How long will they have to watch your videos, the video demo of your lecture? And then will there be a synchronous session for that week? Meaning, will you be able to chat with them using a platform, a discussion forum, email? Will you be able to do Zoom? So how many hours will be devoted? So of course, this is just an example, but the idea here is students should know how much time they need to devote. And also, we will know as teachers how much hours we will be devoting for checking, for being with our students so we can plan the rest of our day. Kasi hindi naman tayo kailangan maging, teacher mode, for the entire day. And then, yun yung binabanggit sa atin ng system na course packs. No? Hindi ko alam kung, baka mapagalitan ako ni ma'am. Pero, I think the course packs, ideally, they should be available all at once. But also, I think we can be allowed to have the contents of the course pack available to students weekly. No? Pwedeng una for element of surprise, but also for us to be able to recalibrate. No? Kasi ang hirap din yung we promise everything all at once. And then, at some point, ang daming mga changes as the semester. Kasi nag-a-adjust din tayo, di ba? So, kaya nga, at the very least, there should be a course roadmap, a general structure, detailed enough so students know what to expect. But this course pack can be uploaded in Ovle. This course pack can be uploaded in Google Drive. They can be saved in the USB, and they can be printed. So if online is really not possible, then we might need to consider sending the course packs to the students. So what are the contents of the course pack? Again, we mentioned them already. So basically, ito yung course pack. No? So ano yung syllabus, a detailed study guide of the content, a detailed learning task, and then the assessment, and then that's it. No? That basically is what the course pack would look like. What was I going to say? So yun. So kaya it's very important for us to assess remote learning readiness. Kasi if majority of our students can do online, then there are few who cannot, then we can devote more resources for them, no? So that they don't get left behind. So kung hindi naman lahat ng students, if not all students would require something printed, then we can devote the resources through more. We can devote the printed copies to those who need them the most. Okay? There. Sige. So now let's go to mode of delivery. Okay? So if we think purely online, let's say in a good case scenario where you have relatively good internet to do emails and watch videos and download things, and your students also have relatively good access, and you are going purely online, what are some of the modes of delivery? So this one was created by Daniel Stanford, and I think it's a very good matrix, no, of the options that are available to us as faculty. So there are two dimensions to this one. One is about bandwidth. So I guess how much data would be needed, and then, so apologies for some engineering if I'm saying it wrong. And also high immediacy, no? So ibig sabihin ng immediacy yung the ability for us to connect with our students as quickly as possible. So if the interaction is more possible for us. So now we can assess our readiness and our students' readiness and look at the quadrant that will work for us. So if you look at this, in an ideal world, if there's high bandwidth, high immediacy, then we can do Zoom. But it's not, that's highly discouraged also. So kaya if we look at low immediacy, not quick responses, and low bandwidth, then we can do emails, we can do editorialized readings, no, or slide decks or discussion forum. You know? So this is the some options that we have, but it's good to think about first what will work for our courses, no, and our students and ourselves. Okay, so we don't have to feel so bad if it's all email, because that's how a purely online course would one mode of a purely online course. If it will work best for you to record your lectures, then maybe that's how it goes. And I think for a lot of skills-based and lab-based courses, parang hirap, parang it's hard to not do some demos or video lectures. So there might be a little bit, lalo na halimbawa, computations, and so we might need to pre-record our videos. Okay, so hopefully this is useful. Okay, then, so if you've already seen the post-ECQ guidelines prepared by the OVCAA, OAT has a section there, and we suggested, so these are suggested modes of instruction. So you have the academic freedom, but we're sort of giving you the options out there. So one would be mostly individualized instruction or independent learning. So here, the idea is there's minimal input from the faculty. A lot of it is management. A lot of it is facilitating the knowledge. No? So kapag ang assumption ay mostly individualized or independent, um, everything has to be available. Everything has to be clear. Kasi the only way it can be independent is if it's clear enough that they won't constantly email us to ask questions. Of course they can, but we minimize that para looking at the course pack alone, parang they can learn and assess themselves and see how they're progressing. So some of the strategies that we can probably do or that you're already probably doing would be one, to editorialize your slide deck. So sometimes for presenting residential, para pretty yung slide deck natin, very minimal text, di ba, yung ginagawa natin. And we don't put everything in para may surprise. But, so imagine, a student will be receiving your PowerPoint, but you can't record your voice. And it's also not ideal to, you know, if you have 120 slides, that how long will that take? Diba? So it's going to be a long video. It's not going to help anybody. So talk to the student using the slide. So you can use signposting slides. So for instance, something like this. So for the rest of the presentation, here's something you're going to expect. Next would be a reflection slide. No? So parang textbook, diba? So after every chunk, you pause and then make them answer something just so they think about the process. No? So for example, I asked them this question. And then, so usually sa slide decks natin, di ba, there's a notes panel where we put in parang our script. So now we just need to pull that up and put that as part of our main presentation. So it's as if we're talking to our students through our slides. Again, we might need to do a lot of demonstrations, a lot of simulations, a lot of video tutorials because we can't do lab work. So at least, at the very least, students can see how things will look like. But we should also try that these videos should be short as much as possible. So 5 to 20 minutes maybe. Because as you can probably imagine, you're here, it's been an hour already, you're hearing me talk, and you're probably bored to death, and you want to exit this webinar. So you think of it that way. Your students have YouTube or Netflix or other distractions, and if it's too long, then it's not going to be helpful and they're not going to watch it. Again, if it's specialized or independent, we might need more printed materials that students can access or that we can give to our students. No? Oh, okay. Sorry. I think. Sige, I'll go back to the. I'm not sure if the request is to go back to the matrix of the modes of delivery for purely online. We'll get back to that later. And also we will have a copy of this slide. We'll email this to you so you'll have a copy. Anyway po, so yung isa rin ay yung kainaman about lab courses is that it's learning occurs by doing. So they have to do the thing so that they would learn the skill. If it's not possible for them to be in the lab, and if we have enough resources, and if we can think of ways to do so, maybe we can prepare do-it-yourself kits for students that we can send to them, or maybe yung whatever materials or resources that students have in their homes. Maybe we can think of something that parang that would be a substitute of your lab equipment or lab materials. Again, we have to recognize that it's not going to be the same, of course, and they won't learn as well, perhaps. No, but at the very least, they go through a process for them to learn something on their own. Okay. Sorry. And then other modes of instruction also include yung combination of synchronous and asynchronous modes. No? So I hear that some of the faculty are already doing this blended approach. No? So wherein, for example, in a week, you have one session for independent work. You give them a video lecture for 6 minutes. For example, you're computing something or explaining something. Then they do a task, like a problem set. And then that's their work on a Tuesday. On a Thursday, during your scheduled hour, you do a session with your students. So, but this one is not a lecture session. This is an opportunity for you to drive home your main points, and then mas feedback siya. No? So, mas matrabaho. So, halimbawa, parang one-on-one maybe, by pair or by group, then you kind of check their work, and then you tell them what can be improved. No? Or it's a class session wherein you're there, and then the point is, do you have any questions? And then you just answer questions. So the session will not be very, very long. Another would be, yeah, online pa din. But then again, if the health situation permits, and with enough justification, if I'm not mistaken, the university is also preparing guidelines, no, for blended classes. So meaning you can meet with your class in the lab at some point. But then again po, yung isa ding difficulty nito ay not all of our students are probably here in Manila. So that might be a little bit challenging for some. But anyway, if possible, no, you can meet with them in the lab at some point, pero mas konti siguro yan. But it will require some justification, a letter to chancellor, most likely, and again, the preparation of our labs. Okay po. And so if you put them together, the planning of the content and the mode of delivery, if you're going purely online, then we can use a learning management system, no, to put all of that as an output. So a student can visit Uvle or Google Classroom, no, for your course back. So these are suggested learning management systems by the ILC. Of course, I mean, we would love for you to use Uvle, because Uvle is very powerful, a lot of functionalities, and it also, I guess they're working with the privacy issues. We're more sure that it's safer in terms of data collected. But these are suggestions. So if you've used Google Classroom before, then no problem. The idea here is we hope that the faculty will converse with each other, so that students will not be overwhelmed by the number of LMSs that they need to use. Okay, so at this point, maybe we can pause for some questions.
Okay, next, what is the ideal amount of time that students should spend at one time listening or watching materials online?
Ano po, let's imagine ourselves, no? For example, if we're listening to a lecture, how long can we handle it? So kaya nga po yung iba, the suggestion is, kung kaya ba natin 5 minutes? I think if we've attended like Coursera courses, and 5-minute videos only, very, very short. No? But the question is how long in a day? It's siguro po mahaba na yung 1 hour. Unless it's a movie, then that's a bit fun to watch. But if it's like a pag lecture, pag information heavy, I think yung suggestion ni Van mamaya sa Uvle, parang 15-minute chunks, para hindi isang go. So, ano po, shorter.
Okay, next one would be related to the survey and remote learning readiness. Can we have a standard set of questions that we can ask to the students, and can it be integrated with CRS?
That's an excellent suggestion.
Yes.
We will keep that in mind po. The CU Committee on Remote Learning will meet, and we will see po what we can do. Actually, meron na po tayong template niyan. Your colleges will probably already have a copy of the OVCA survey, because your colleges or your units were the ones who farmed them out. So maybe we can ask ano naman it's fair use. So you can probably tweak that for now if you want to start preparing for now. But we will take that into consideration. Thank you po.
So maybe we can ask the other questions later.
Okay. So next, the task is to curate learning resources. No? So again, the idea here is we don't have to do everything on our own. We don't have to audio record or video record, if we're not comfortable. So the idea here is to look for the helpful resources. So again po, yung crucial lang na dapat tandaan how we can distill the need to know resources for our students. Kasi nga, there's more work for all of us, lalo for them. So the learning resources can be in the form of yung mga classic, no, that we've been using, readings, textbooks, no, YouTube videos. Si AVP Vanji shared jove.com. So apparently there are video journals or visualized experiments. No? I'm not sure how much of the content is freely available, but it's a good idea for students for now to learn about these things. So we let them watch an experiment going on. And then online or virtual laboratories, like she also shared labster.com. Or if there's a way for UP or units to purchase maybe some license to virtual laboratories, so maybe that can do for now. Or mga homemade laboratories for created by us. And then there's also a lot of podcasts available. So all of these things, all of the resources, they just have to be explicit, no, and uploaded somewhere, or that students know that these are the resources for a particular topic. Um, and also, in some of the learning activities that we can do. So yung challenging about remote is that, diba, we can ask, can we still do group reports? Can we still do group works? No? Is there still a way for class recitation or graded recitation? The answer is possible but different mode. No? So the important reminder for us here, for instance, if we're going to do learning activities, there has to be a detailed study guide. No? So for instance, I'm sorry. I'm just going to share with you very quickly this sample of a detailed study guide. So what are the elements of this detailed study guide? So the tasks have to be clear. So for instance, what are you going to ask the student to do? Students are going to watch, and then students are going to answer something. And then we kind of set it up. So in any classroom activity naman po that we do, di ba, we set it up first, no, before we watch them go. So what can they expect, you know, and some more details. And then here are the questions that they need to answer. You know? And then the due date. No? Yung kulang po dito, what's missing here is, what do you call this? Where they're going to submit. If this is something to be submitted, where are they going to submit it? And what time is the deadline? And also, important, rubric. How will they be graded for this one? So this one for me is a reflection exercise. So pass, submit, pass or nothing. So if you submit, then you get a 1. If none, the 0. So that's one way of grading. If it's going to be a little bit more exacting, like 3 to 1, so students have to know, what does uno mean? What are you expecting if it's uno for these kinds of requirements? So yan po yung isang halimbawa. So now, all our activities have to have a very detailed study guide. What else? Sorry. Then we also have collaborative outputs. No? So a while ago, we did the Mentimeter, which is an example of a collaborative output. So you can have a prompt question, and then from that prompt question, you will see students respond on a virtual blackboard. So Mentimeter, it doesn't have to be synchronous. They can just submit anytime. There's also like a word cloud functionality, a polling functionality. We can utilize Google Docs, no? So we can see the students working collaboratively when they work on Google Docs, no? Or we can ask our students, so instead of like a group report or a group presentation, we ask them to prepare a slide deck collectively. No? So it's a PowerPoint, but then it went through all of them, and then they're going to submit that to you in an editorialized fashion if they can present it in class. No? It's also good to have like a structured discussion forum. So this will simulate or mimic the class recitation. So the important reminder is, if we want students to participate well, we have to structure it well, because students might not be familiar with this mode. And also we have to be prepared, just like our exercise a while ago. Some students will not be as participative compared to the others maybe, or will have difficulty accessing the material. So we have to be prepared for that. So what is an example of a structured discussion forum? So at this one, I really appreciate kasi very clear yung instructions sa students. So students will post first from a prompt question, and then these are the instructions. So parang these are the expectations to students. You need to share and compare something, explore a difference in opinion, you exchange resources, you generate a solution to a problem related to a peer response. Now, so these are the things that you will expect sa discussion forum para hindi lang sila puro, I agree, it's okay, noted, because those are not helpful, especially if we're going to grade these kinds of responses. Okay. Then there's also a lot of exercises. I think for a lot of lab courses, baka this might be the strategy, no? So we make them imagine particular scenarios in the laboratory, or we make them imagine particular output, or we show a particular output that maybe did not work, and then we can ask the students what went wrong or what did they do right. So that might be one way of thinking about as activities for the students. At pwede rin yan collaborative. No? They will chat their answers to particular problems. So it might be good to maximize for a lot of lab courses or skills-based courses na ganitong scenario-based or special problems activities for our students. Okay? Sige. Meron po ba tayong questions, Miss Ivy, before
Okay,
we
so
proceed to the last segment?
yeah, this is a question that all faculty members share. Not all faculty members may have a conducive space for conducting online class activities. Can the university allow the use of selected spaces in the college being guided by safety protocols? And would we be able to estimate when this can be possible?
Okay, excellent question. We will put Chancellor on the spot. Easier, but we're joke lang po. But we'll take note of that, and we will andito rin po si AVP Vanji. So we will take note of that and discuss and give concrete answers po as soon as possible. But that is an excellent. Sana nga po talaga ma-consider kasi Miss Ivy and I were talking about this, that the internet connection in UP is so much faster than the ones we have at home maybe. And also our offices are good spaces to record. So yeah, we just have to be very careful. And clear guidelines will be set. So we will ask the admin to reconsider, to open it up at least for faculty.
Okay, next, can the OAT provide sample adjusted syllabus, standard course packs, examples of learning activities, and so on?
Oh, maybe I can share pala the sample from Chem 16. I asked permission po if I can share this. So this is how they did it. No? I think the second semester, if I'm not mistaken. So it's an Excel file. It's a simple Excel file, pero yung makita po natin that changed ay so course topic, learning outcomes, pero nakasulat explicitly yung hours allotted. No? Pati yung platform and types of assessment that students can expect, no, from our courses. So this might be one example, good example from Chem 16. So yan po. So nakalagay lang siya dyan. So if we are going to be more detailed, so andito rin po siguro yung chapter, ano exactly yung type of activity na gagawin ng students. No? But this can be a start. No? Parang this can be a template that we can continuously fill out as we move along. Yeah. So yun po. So importante yung study guide. Kasi dapat may study guide. Importante yung anong ipapagawa at yung learning resources. Actually po, pag meron na yun at nasa uvlet na siya, parang meron tayong course pa. But for now, pupunta na po tayo dun sa isa sa mga a little bit more challenging for a lot of us. Okay, yan po ay may kinalaman sa assessment. Okay, so it might be good. So before we think of, so sabi nga po natin, diba, importante na malinaw what our learning outcomes are. Yeah, because those outcomes are going to be assessed kung nagawa pa nila, if they were able to do it. But also, it might be good to think about these principles before we before we plan for the types of assessment. So, una, what the important principle to remember is that now more than ever, I think we need to really reconsider having a wider range of course requirements. So, parang for me, the rule of thumb, so diba in our syllabus, we break down the sources of their grades. So, if sometimes we're heavily dependent on exams, it now might not be a good idea no, to just use exams as their main source of their grades. So, sa akin, my rule of thumb would be like 20 to 30% for each component. So I have at least 5 sources of their grade. This is important because if if something goes wrong in the middle of the semester, students cannot access the exam, or it was difficult for them, or bumagsak sila dun, at least that's only like 20 to 30%. Meron pa rin ibang aspects of their grade that we can use no, in evaluating the student. The second general principle would be regular and frequent feedback. No? So, again, my rule of thumb here is before I assign something new, I should have returned what I asked them to submit to me the previous week or the previous module. No, so because now we can't see them face to face, and there's no way for us to monitor their progress as easily. So we need to provide more regular feedback, ideally after every exercise, so we know if they're getting the things that we want them to get. And then third, now more than ever, there should be clear and explicit expectations in terms of how they will be assessed, how they will be graded, no? And also clear and explicit expectations on ethical behaviors. The challenge now is, and I guess this also dovetails into principle number 4, that we need to plan for not just open notes, but open everything. The reality is, no matter how hard we try, in a remote learning context, and actually even in a residential context, there's really no way for us to know or to be assured uh, na they're not cheating or there's nothing open. No? So we plan for that. No? So what types of questions can we give such that even if they open everything, even if they have 300 calculators in front of them, no, it's still not going to be easy. One quick strategy would be to make it time bound. So para if they did prepare, they wouldn't be able to answer everything. But it's also good to be very clear about what counts as academic dishonesty for you. So it's plagiarism, uh, academic dishonesty ba kapag, collaborative work, etc. No? So students have to be reminded of these things. So just very quickly, let's talk about some types of assessment tools that you are already using probably, or you want to use. But let's differentiate between high stakes requirements. No? They're high stakes because they usually occur at milestones, usually mid-year and finals, and also they're one-time, big-time demonstration of skills. No? So very exacting. There is a clear guideline, for instance, correct answer or incorrect answer. So they can be in the form of an essay. Yung isang might be helpful suggestion if a lot of us are going to require multiple choice type of question. So, UVLE has the functionality na timed yung question, pero kailangan nga yun online. Pero pwede siyang timed, if I'm not mistaken. Yung Google Classroom, again, if I'm not mistaken, hindi, para siyang Google Form. So, students can answer it anytime. So regardless if it's time bound, they can answer it anytime. One way of upping up the stakes of MCQs would be to let them explain their answers. So ito, you would know if they cheated, no, kasi they would have a similar explanation as with their classmates. But also, so that we won't parang, should we burden ourselves with anxiety, na parang, are they cheating? Are they doing it properly or whatever? One way for us, para hindi tayo masyadong mag-worry, is to lessen or lower the stakes of an exam. One good practice that I heard, so they give the exam. So I think it's for a stats course. They give the exam, and then the next meeting or immediately after, the teacher will already email the students the answer key. So the students will now um, check their own paper, no? And then the grade there is not as huge as before, no? Or you can give them like a part two of the exam. So parang, oh, now you know how it works. You've practiced the exam already. So I will add another item. So that item will be the one that will be graded more than the parang the practice items. Still, we can probably do some group presentation or reports, in the form of slide deck nga, or Zoom if possible. Oral exams, if possible for your classes. So for example, you want them to demonstrate something but they can't demonstrate it visually. So baka through a call, pwede na nila magawa yung pinapagawa natin. And then for some research papers or probably research proposals, what a lot of education experts are suggesting are more low stakes requirements now. No, they're low stakes because they occur frequently. So ibig sabihin there are more opportunities para bumawi. No, if they miss one, it won't matter so much kasi there are at least 5 more, for instance. And then the goal here really is to track progress. So what we're rewarding here is consistency of effort. Pag high stakes kasi parang ang nire-reward mo talaga doon yung correctness, di ba? But for low stakes, we're rewarding them for submitting as consistently as possible. So we can do a lot of exercises and assignments, a lot of short quizzes, a lot of problem sets, answers to prompt questions, chapter outlines or reading memos, concept maps. For a lot of courses which have experiments, I do understand that you're already doing this, di ba? Yung mga progress reports for every milestone before the final output. So I'm not sure now how you can negotiate with your unit if the students cannot, for example, gagawa ng transistor radio, no? Or some tool, no? Some machine. But they, of course, you don't have access to those kinds of equipments, maybe. What could be an alternative, no, na pwede pa rin na parang weekly merong progress na nangyayari, na may natututunan sila weekly. And then comments on a classroom forum post para we can simulate some discussion. And then yung isa that might be, I'm not sure how this will be applicable to a lot of our science and technology cluster courses, pero yung portfolio, no? Yung idea po of a portfolio is an evidence of learning that is curated naman by the student. So ito mas malaking reframing yung kailangan kasi we're going to parang put a lot of premium to self-assessment and peer assessment, and that students are able to set goals for themselves, and then they say, this is what I want to learn, and then we give them activities to support how they're learning, and they're going to show evidence that they're learning. But that one, baka if we're not used to it, it might be very difficult. But it's good to keep in mind na the point here is students should have an evidence for themselves, lalo na, that they learned. Tas tayo, kailangan natin ng evidence para pwede natin silang mag-grade. Kasi kailangan natin magbigay ng grade. Okay? I'll just show you this sample rubric from the for a discussion forum. So, for instance, you want a graded recitation type of assessment. So I showed you the expectations of what they should post. So this one, this is how they will be graded. So they know what to expect. So did they broaden the discussion? Ganyan. So you can tell them, oh, if you hit at least one here, you get full points. No? Or if you want to be more exacting, dapat lahat yan. Pero mas mahirap yun i-grade. So yun po. So ang importante talaga dito, the message here is to be more explicit about our expectations and to be more explicit about how students will be graded for every output that they produce for us. So just to close the loop, no? So kung babalikan lang po natin, we started with reminding ourselves that the learning outcomes as the foundation of everything, and everything should be aligned. No? So yung magiging challenge ngayon ay, for instance, no, these are the course outcomes that you said that students should be able to do. Now, when we plan our assessment, we have to think about, can these be demonstrated using resources available at home? No, yung basic lab techniques, kaya ba? Or in the meantime, pwede bang mas problem-based or scenario-based or case-based assessments muna? No? So the idea here is, you know, you know the thing and you can analyze why something went wrong. Or you can tell me how to do something step by step. Maybe that can be a substitute for now. No? We can also think of other substitute, detailed description of a process and the anticipated issues, maybe demonstrations. They will demonstrate using a different software or equipment, if possible. Or can the virtual experience do for now? No? So halimbawa, if our courses require a lot of site visits, a lot of field activities, no? uh, I think there's also a course that requires parang plant visits, ganyan. So, can a virtual site visit do for now? No? Can we partner with the site na may tour yung students so they will not be able to go, but at least they can see for themselves how things work. No? Or if possible, partner with a site that is convenient for everybody or maraming branches elsewhere. No? Para wherever they may be, they can access and then kind of have a partnership with these institutions or sites. Para students can still, visit them when needed. Sige. Any questions so far related to assessment?
Related to assessment and also questions for ILC and UBLE. So ito po yung mga tanong, i-group ko na together. So do we have a plagiarism screening software available in UP? And how can we assure that, do you have any suggestions against plagiarism? And also ensure the integrity of the submission for online learning. Tapos, does the university have plans on getting institutional subscriptions for screen recording and video editing?
Okay.
Last na po, can we use other platforms other than UVLE, such as Google Classroom?
Okay. Sige, say natin. Is there a plagiarism checker? I think if I heard correctly during the they will talk about this in the workshop later. Parang we have a CROT function, but it doesn't work the same way as parang Turnitin. I think sa UP Diliman, isang college lang ata yung may Turnitin at nakikilimos tayo sa kanila. Kaya ang bait ng library ng College of Engineering. Thank you. So I think that the quick answer is so far not as powerful as Turnitin, but we have in UVLE. They will explain that later during their seminar. And then I think UP is also purchasing license for Turnitin para more faculty can use. In terms of assuring in the integrity, so during our meeting yesterday, si AVP Vanji shared parang some units, some schools use what they call like an academic integrity statement or an honor code. No? So at the beginning of the course or for actually ang suggestion nila, for every assignment that students submit, they will sign the code. And what should the code contain? That they're really saying that they did the work, that they didn't do anything dishonest, and that they are aware of the consequences if they engage in academic dishonesty. And this time there are a lot of ways for us to double check. If usually if we've been teaching for a long time, meron tayong idea if things were plagiarized or there was cheating going on. No? Pero yun nga, parang to unburden ourselves of that, we plan accordingly. So it's up to you. No? You can use Zoom as CCTV. Diba? Ask your students to go on Zoom and record that exam while they're taking the exam. No, but still, we don't know what's on their screen, yung mga ganyan. So, yun nga po, we either up the questions a bit or we make them answer this academic integrity statement. And just constantly remind them, we put some structure so that students will we'll be more honest.
Okay po. Ito po yung mga tanong na na-upvote. Is there a required maximum and minimum number of hours of workload for a student for a certain course?
Actually, there is, no? For a 3-unit course, around 114. Let me pull up the um, maglalabas din po kami siguro ng more concrete guidelines for you. Pero kung titignan natin yung Excel halimbawa ng Chem 16, malaki yung hours na nilagay nila parang 114, which already includes study time and assessment. But I think this is for the entire semester already. So I think the idea here is that baka yung 3 hours a week might not be enough. So we calibrate lang po na kaya ba na 4 hours a week ang i-spend nila sa klase natin, knowing that they have other classes also. But yeah, this might be a good estimate na parang from yung range na from 400 to 114 hours for a 3-unit course. Yeah. Yun po.
Okay, thank you. Based on the Hubble approach, what would be the implications on prerequisite courses? So are the prerequisite courses waived for now for this sem?
Yan po yung, I think that is one of the reasons why we're being asked to do a program redesign so that the university will know what kind of policies can be adjusted or flexed a little bit. So I think there will be a template coming soon for us. So we need to identify what courses yun pong kailangan i-waive yung prerequisites, halimbawa ganyan, or or pwedeng i-offer during the mid-year if ever. So ano po, we need to plan and write them down po so the admin can act appropriately.
So next, it was mentioned that asynchronous session should be more for clarifications. Are we allowed to do online lectures to explain complex concepts?
Yes, definitely po. We are allowed to do lectures. The good practices po that I've seen through they record their lectures, parang their voices using the PowerPoint already. Some do demonstrations talaga using a blackboard. Opo. Basta we just have to be mindful of access. So, are we going to upload it in YouTube para siguro mas mabilis ma-access? How big is the file? Pero yun po, there's no stopping us from doing lectures. We just have to be mindful of the length. Kasi nga po, if it's too long, then it might not be very helpful also for students. So again po, yun nga po, parang distill to the need to know for our lectures. And then may separate file na lang for nice to.
Yes po. Next, wouldn't low stakes assessment take more time for the teacher to prepare, assess, and give feedback than the high stakes?
Yes, opo. Yun po yung opo. Sadly, yes. Yun po mga experts would say, parang yung authentic assessment po requires more monitoring. So kaya mas dumadami siya. So ano naman po parang low stakes. So yung isang strategy to make it easier would be we grade effort. So as long as they submit, we can check and parang look at the kumbaga you won't check it as much as as detailed. If it's a problem set. So parang just take a quick feel of the common errors and then that's what you're going to course correct in the middle of the semester or next meeting. Or ano po, sobrang one item, kunwari, if it's possible. So, napaka-importante po nun. So, we also think about what we can check given the number of students we have. So ang idea naman po ay if the low stakes requirement is not possible and the only way out would be high stakes requirement, then yun po, meron po siyang kakabit na mga consequences. Yun lang po, parang dapat malinaw lang sa atin. Kasi ano naman po ito, everything here is suggested. Everything here, in fact, probably you've already been doing, so probably nothing new for a lot of you. And if it's not really new, then let this serve po as an affirmation of your strategies. Yeah.
Okay, next would be, is it possible to have a different approach for one class? For example, most have stable internet access, so I can give them online activities. But for those without full or even partial online capabilities, can I send a modular approach? Would this still be fair?
Yes, definitely. Kaya po napaka-importante nung learning assessments umpisa kasi wala naman po tayong expectation na isang mode lang for all of our classes. Ibang animal po yung grad class, for instance, sa undergrad, iba yung large class, sa lab-based class. No? So ano po ito? Parang ito na po yung menu available and then we will decide. But my suggestion po is decide as a unit what will work best for our students.
Okay po, salamat. So this is more a question of our students. Will our unit load per semester be affected? Will we be delayed due to the shift to remote learning, due to rearrangement shifts in our curriculum? Will you ensure that we will graduate on time? And also, what is the basis for establishing the academic load for both students and teachers?
Okay, wait. Can we do, sige po, one at a time. The first one is about
Yung academic load of the students, would they be delayed or due to the rearrangement of the
yeah.
curriculum?
Opo, dapat po hindi. Kaya again po, yung sa program redesign, in terms of student load, wina-work out din po yung policies on ano yung pwedeng minimum for a semester. Pero yeah, let's assume po na kunwari, dapat walang madidelay. Yun po. So we will try to be more flexible about the policies. Tulad ng nangyari nung second semester.
Okay, ilang tanong pa po, Sir Todd.
Yeah, po. Baka we have time for some po. It's already 10:55, 10:56. So baka po, I don't know, maybe 2 more questions and then we can probably close this with some more reminders.
Okay, next would be, is it possible to implement a universal change in grade scale during the first sem and mid-year, since this sem is not comparable to other sems?
Change the grade scale? Yun po ba yung parang 97 to 100 bilang uno, mga ganyan? Yun po kaya ibig sabihin? That's a good question. We will confirm if that is. My understanding po is parang faculty have the academic freedom. Kasi I've seen a lot of syllabi already where it's accumulation of points. So parang 300 points, parang 270 to 300 points uno. No? I've seen other units po na ang uno yata nila ay parang 92 to 100, ganyan. Or ibang units naman mas mahigpit, 97 to 100 or even 100. So, yeah, I think we have that kind of freedom po as long as it's reasonable and well explained to our faculty, to our students, how they're being graded and why they're being graded that way.
How about with the loading of the faculty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so far po, it's good to work on the assumption that we have a 24-unit requirement that can be distributed first sem, second sem, and mid-year. Meron pong wino-work out yung system na some form of incentive, I think. Opo. So we're still waiting po for the final plans. But ano po kasi ito parang it might be safe to assume, I'm not speaking for the system, this is my personal take on this one. It might be safe po to assume that we will be working with a 24-unit load and then the usual routes of the loading will apply. So extension load credit, research load credit, admin load credit, study load credit, no? And then, so yun po, for now, kasi yun po yung system in place. And then to also think about possible backlog. Kasi ano po liliit yung class size, tas kung konti yung offerings natin, it will create different animal na problema in the form of students not being delayed po because kulang yung course offerings natin. So ito po yung balance that we need to make for our classes. Yun. So, Ms. Ivy, sorry, maybe one more question?
For the last question, for multi-section courses, would you recommend a common course pack for all sections, or should we allow the faculty member handling each course to be more creative or more flexible?
Yes, that's a good question po. Ako po, I always operate doon sa um, yung academic freedom with responsibility ng faculty. Kung mapapansin po natin, a lot of our guidelines are usually suggestions or usually recommendations. Hindi wala po tayong tinatakda. Basta ano lang po, work with the best interest of student in mind. So, it would be good for ang tawag po dito, para may certain level of, di similarity yung word that I'm looking for, but pero yun po yung idea, para pare-pareho sila ng makukuha. Might be good to have a similar course path. The advantage of that also is that you will not be working alone. However, if it's not for you, or it's very difficult for you to work with others, or you have your own ideas that don't necessarily fit well with the overall picture, we have that kind of freedom. But it also comes with some costs. Like, yun nga po, you'll be doing it alone. But if you can, and you think it will be in the best interest of the student, then so be it. Okay po. So sorry po that we will have to cut this for now, and we don't have time for all of your questions. But sina Joy and Daisy, our staff team po, they're collecting all of your questions, and we will try to answer them in some form, whether a Q&A form or a set of guidelines po for this. So final set of slides na lang po, just for reminders. So a few more resources. If you haven't checked out po, the post-ECQ guidelines of OVCAA, it's available in the UP website. We have a section nga po dyan. Some of the things I discussed are already available here. The UP College of Education po released this white paper. Ang ganda po nung kanilang parang mantra. Stay well, keep learning. No? This is mostly po directed for basic ed, K-12 faculty, but there are a lot of guiding principles that we can use. Finally po, but I invite you po to visit the Open University Oasis website. Meron din po dyan ilang mga detailed guidelines on course module development and a lot of other resources helpful as we shift to remote learning. Again, yung ILC po, meron silang guide on tools for conducting classes online. Please visit their website. And then final reminders lang po, there's no one-size-fits-all strategy for all of this. So we try to be as flexible and as creative, but it's important to talk po to your units and colleagues so that parang merong united front going on. Because it's our first time, maybe we might need to ask for frequent feedback from students so we can calibrate accordingly. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough, work in teams if possible. Enroll in an online course just to get the feel of how it is to be a student, and then clarify to yourself or your unit what your guiding principles are, and then operationalize them. And let this be a reminder, let this webinar be a reminder po that it's going to be difficult and challenging and heartbreaking, and we will miss a lot of things about face-to-face, but we will get through this. And a lot of your questions po are support questions. No? We'd like you to know that we're working very hard. Our offices and the remote learning communities are here to support you po as much as we can. Thank you po for your suggestions, and hopefully we can find a way to consolidate and plan accordingly. Okay po. So as we move forward, we are being asked to do a program redesign to prepare our course packs. Again po, it sounds a little bit fancy, but it's as simple as the ones listed there. And then slowly po, after we're more comfortable with OVLE, we might need to migrate our course materials. Okay po. So once again, ito po yung mga goals that we tried to accomplish this morning. Hopefully po na-hit natin sila. We tried to provide a context of remote learning. We discussed the strategies and preparations that we need to make. And we tried to answer not very many, but hopefully some helpful concerns related to remote learning. Okay po. So thank you so much. Good luck po. Let's support each other during this time. Again po, if you think you want a certificate of attendance for this, please answer for the evaluation form. If you have questions or concerns, here is my email ad and the email ad of our office for the advancement of teaching. We will be glad to hear from you po. Thank you po for being here and for joining us and for still staying on. Bye-bye po. Thank you. Have a good Thursday ahead of you. Good luck preparing. And don't forget po the webinar this afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.